Hey guys, it's Tori, and today I'm coming at you looking very bedraggled because 5 days ago I had an emergency appendectomy. Woke up in the morning this past Saturday just feeling in a lot of pain in my abdomen and went to urgent care, got a few tests done, and ended up in surgery to get my appendix removed. Many of you probably know that already if you follow me on Instagram, but if you don't, that's what I've been doing. And originally I was planning to research and record my video discussing love shapes within Victorian literature. I'm not in a mode to do any sort of research or deep thought. Like, I'm having a hard enough time reading. It's been 5 days. They said it would be about a week to 10 days before I would fully recover, and it's definitely looking like that's going to be the case for me. I'm definitely better than I was, but I'm still pretty nauseous, and the pain definitely is still showing up. I can't walk around very much. I can't stand up straight, which is the problem with walking around. I can't stand up straight, plus the movement causes me to feel more nauseous and pain. So anyway, that all to say, I was really sad that I felt like I wasn't going to be able to get as many Victorian videos up as I originally planned to. The love shapes one I may do in November, December, because I at least have already started thinking about it. So I wouldn't mind doing a later post-Victober kind of video, just kind of to make up for that, since I said I would do it and it's one I was excited to do, but I just don't think it's going to happen this month with everything else. So I luckily did watch some Victober videos while I've been out on my couch for the past several days, and a few of them have been in regards to the Victorian literature journey tag. I did the Shakespeare journey tag that this tag is based on last month. Really enjoyed it, and Roz from Scally Dandling about the books and her daughter Tilly from Tilly's Shelf ended up doing a Victorian literature version of it. So I decided I would just do that. I have not really prepared beforehand at all. I literally just kind of looked through the questions and kind of thought of vague answers. I have my list of Victorian books that I've read, so I'll be able to remember since my brain is not particularly functional right now. And we're just gonna go for this. So yeah, it's very casual, no makeup done, didn't even brush my hair, just jumping on here to do this. So hopefully we enjoy. I have my computer down here with the questions. So the first question is, what was your first experience reading Victorian literature and how was it? I may have read something before. Okay, so when I was in elementary school, actually, I attempted to read Great Expectations, but it was in like a Great Illustrated Classics edition, so it was like a shortened, didn't include everything version, and I was real bored, so I did not get very far. But I kind of like knew about Victorian literature growing up just from like films, watching films with readers who would discuss Victorian literature, so it was always kind of in the back of my mind, this idea of 19th century literature, and I was like, man, I would love to become the kind of person that reads that, but I just naturally wasn't. Like, I'm much more of an audible learner, and so physically reading, it's taken me a long time to get me to a point where I can comprehend as well. Like, I've always been a reader. I've always had a book that I was currently reading, so it's not like it hindered my ability to read in general. It's just when it came to classics, it was a little bit harder for me to comprehend what was being said on the page because it's easier for me to understand things in general when listening to them. So like school with lectures and stuff totally works for me because that's how I learn. Reading has taken a little more training as far as like comprehension levels go. So my very first real experience reading Victorian literature was in high school. I took an AP literature class, and the summer reading assignment was Wuthering Heights, which when I read it, really did not like it. But when we discussed it in class, I ended up finding I really enjoyed it. And like I said, it was always kind of at the back of my mind that I wanted to be the type of person who read Victorian literature. So that year I really started to read a lot more. I read some on my own, like Picture of Dorian Gray. I read Jane Eyre. I think I read Far from the Madding Crowd, but only because we read Tess of the D'Urbervilles for that same class, and I loved that book and found myself loving Thomas Hardy. My teacher really liked Thomas Hardy as well, and so she spoke glowingly about his book books, and so it made me more interested after reading Tess and loving it. So yeah, that was my first real introduction, and it definitely was a success. It almost wasn't with Wuthering Heights, but after discussing it and kind of seeing it in a new light, I found myself really enjoying it a lot better. So question 2 is, has the reading of a Victorian book ever brought you to tears? If so, tell us more. Yes, several of them have brought me to tears. One I remember pretty distinctly is Shirley by Charlotte Bronte, and that was just because I related to some of the feelings, especially at the time when I read it. I really related to some of the feelings, and so it kind of hit really close to home. A couple others I've cried in A Tale of Two Cities and Bleak House. Honestly, there's probably been others, but off the top of my head, those are the ones that made me cry. Surely because I related to it, the other two because of just sad things that happen in them. If you're wondering, Tess of the D'Urbervilles does make me cry now, but at the time, like I said, it took me time to get better at comprehension levels, and so that impacted the emotional impact. It was never awful, obviously, like I could read books and like understand what was happening, but there was some like certain things that didn't quite connect for me, especially in Victorian literature. But the film adaptation of that makes me cry a lot. So 3, are there any people who have played a significant role in your Victorian literature journey? First of all, I'll mention that teacher that I had that class from, Miss Roadhouse. I know she's watched at least 1 or 2 videos of mine before because she's commented on them, so I don't know if she's watching this one, but she definitely played a huge role in my love of Victorian literature and classics in general, and I will forever be grateful for that. She just had such a energy about her when she'd talk about them that made it so much more exciting to read, but also like a lot of intelligence when addressing what was going on in them and discussing them. And so it was a perfect balance for me to just fall in love with Victorian literature in particular, but literature in general. So definitely attribute a lot of that to her. And then I would say 3 specific booktubers that have played a big role are Katie from Books and Things, Kate Howe, and Jennifer Brooks. I feel like are all people who their videos discussing Victorian literature have helped me to find a greater love for it. Obviously, Katie from Books and Things and Kate Howe both have read a lot. They host Victober, they've hosted it this whole time, and so they just have a lot of interesting things to bring to the table. And then Jennifer Brooks, I actually feel like we have pretty different tastes in a lot of ways when it comes to Victorian literature. Not always, there's always, things we agree on, but I would say on the whole there's a lot that she likes that I don't, and vice versa, but I still find a lot of her videos discussing Victorian literature to be very interesting and encourage me to want to read even more. Question 4, do you have a favorite film or TV adaptation of a Victorian book? What about one you'd like to see made? My favorite adaptation of Victorian literature is Far From the Madding Crowd, the 2015 edition. I love that movie. It just has the soundtrack and the colors and look that I just love and just fill me with all of the Victorian vibes. I love it so much. It also has a lot of fall vibes, which just helps with reading it in October. So I love that film. I do not like the interpretation of Sergeant Troy, especially his and some of the aspects of him towards the end. I feel like I have to mention that because it's not a perfect adaptation to me, but it just gives me the exact atmosphere I look for and captures the book in a way that I just love, and just the hardiness of it in a way that I just love. So yes, that's definitely one that I never get tired of watching. I just love it so much. It's one of my favorite films of all time. I actually just made last week a whole video discussing 5 different books that I'd like to see adapted to the screen, so I'll link that down below. One other I didn't mention in that video that I've thought about since is Return of the Native, just speaking about Far From the Madding Crowd and the atmosphere in that movie. The atmosphere in Return of the Native is impeccable. There's just a few Hardy novels. I mean, Hardy is all about atmosphere, I feel like, but there's a few that have particular atmosphere to them that I really, really love. And Return of the Native, I just think would be so fun. I know there's an adaptation of it. Actually, I think there's a couple adaptations of it, which I have not seen. So one of them I could really like, I don't know, but I do feel like a nice gothic version of that particular book would be a wonderful thing to experience. So question 5, which character in Victorian literature most resembles you or you identify most with. As I said, I really relate to Caroline in Shirley by Charlotte Bronte. I think earlier I might have accidentally said that I related to Shirley, but Caroline, who's the actual main character of the story, I related a lot to her. I don't know if I read it now. That was several years ago, and I don't know if I read it now if I would feel the same. That was an interesting read because I really connected with her, but I found the plot so boring that I really ultimately didn't really like that book. But I enjoyed Caroline as a character, and I enjoy Shirley as a character. But yeah, I remember I cried because I related so much to her. I would also say I got a little bit emotional this last year when I read Bleak House because I feel like I relate to Esther Summerson a lot. Basically, I just relate to these characters that everybody else considers mousy and like off to the side and kind of boring. And I always feel sad when people say that because I'm like, oh, but I like relate to her. Like, I like characters that are maybe quiet and off to the side and are very logical, but also feel things very deeply and struggle to really approach their own feelings. Those are the characters I connect with. So, question 6, do you have a favorite moment, scene, or line from Victorian literature? Tell us about it or read it to us. There's so many that I really love that just stick in my mind. I mean, the end of Tale of Two Cities with Sydney Carton really that whole scene sticks in my mind. For that matter, the ending of Madame Defarge's, like her last scene in that book, I really replay a lot. The ending of Bleak House, I replay in my head a lot. I just love that. It was so cute. Probably one where like I replay different quotes from the book in my head often, specifically, is Tess of the D'Urbervilles, the like early big plot change moment in like the first volume, the first part. I not only replay like the scene itself and think about it because it's just such a dramatic scene, but also like certain lines and quotes from the description of it I often think about. I'm not going to read it because spoilers, but those are a few scenes that I often like find myself thinking about. Question 7, does any Victorian literature intimidate you? If so, what and why? I'm always intimidated by poetry. I just have never gotten that deep into poetry, and so it always throws me off a little bit, but I do want to read a little bit more. I have like, Idylls of the King by Alfred Lord Tennyson. I have The Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti. I have the complete works of Emily Bronte. So I have options. I just haven't read any of them, but I really would like to remedy that. A specific book that intimidates me is Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens. I don't know why. It's not like it's the longest or anything. I think it's because I know Katie from Books and Things loves that book, and I haven't really heard other people saying how much they love it and stuff, but I think something about that, because it was like so early on that I remember her saying that and me being like, oh, I'm so interested to read this, but it was like big, and Charles Dickens, who I wasn't really very invested in at that point, I wasn't sure about at that point. I think those feelings have just continued to carry on, even though I've read other Charles Dickens novels, like I still feel a little intimidated by that one. So hopefully I'll get over it eventually. It was like one of the first Dickens novels I ever purchased for myself because of Katie loving it so much, and I still haven't read it because it just intimidates me and I don't really know why. Question 8, what tips would you give to someone early in their Victorian literature journey? I think I would give 2 tips that are pretty connected as far as why I'd give them. The first is, don't be afraid to take it slow. Like, you could take a month or more to read a book, just like split it up over multiple amounts of days or weeks and just let yourself fall into it. The second tip is just let yourself fall into it. Recognize that these books are meant to be like TV series. They're not meant to be like movies, most of them. Meaning that a lot of them were serialized, and so a lot of them take a lot of time. There's a lot of little random scenes that all build up to creating these characters and this plot. When you watch a TV series, you take longer to get through it and you're enjoying all the individual moments and just hanging out with the characters most of the time. Like, you're not just trying to get through it. I mean, sometimes you kind of are, but you're also just enjoying being with the characters usually. If you love a TV series, you love just hanging out in that world and with those people and seeing what shenanigans and stuff they get into. And I think if you approach Victorian literature in general in the same way, where you're like, I'm gonna take it slow, it's gonna take longer, but like the purpose is to be in the story. It's not just to get through the story and think back. Like, I think a lot of modern literature, the point is kind of to get through the book so you can see what happens and how the characters develop and stuff. But in Victorian literature, the purpose is to hang out in the world of that's created by the author with the characters created by the author. And then the plot just helps to carry you through that. So I would say go into it knowing it's going to take a long time and being open to it taking a long time, especially early on. And just look at it, yeah, like you're watching a favorite TV series, not a movie, because it's going to be a lot easier for you to get engaged in the right headspace for it. I guess the third tip is if you don't like a book, don't expect to not like any Victorian literature. Like there's so much Victorian literature. Chances are there's going to be something you like. There's all sorts of different genres, all sorts of different types of stories, just like nowadays. And so just reading one or two even, or even five, like maybe it will slow you down if you don't like all five of them, but like be willing to try things periodically because there's just so many different types of stories that some are great, some are not. And that's just the way books work. Question 9 is, what is your top recommended read for other readers of Victorian literature? That's so hard because obviously other readers of Victorian literature could have read anything that I've read, and I don't know specifically what everybody has read, but I guess I would say try out Hardy's short stories. I only have read one collection, so it's not like a super strong recommendation because I've only read the one collection, but I was surprised by how much I liked his short stories, to be honest. And I think if you like his general novels, obviously he can't fit as much in a short story, but I feel like they have a very similar feeling. Some of them slightly gothic, a lot of them just kind of the countryside, the poor, and seeing how they deal with things. I think he does a really good job, so I would say go ahead and try some Hardy short stories if you haven't, and read Victorian literature a lot. But as I said, like everybody's just different, and some people have read things other people haven't, and it's a little bit hard to give general recommendations like that, but there you are. And that is it. I also just realized I've been looking at Roz's video for the questions, and she actually did tag me in this video. So there you are, Roz. I did it. And hopefully y'all enjoyed. I will link Roz's original video and channel down below, and I'll also link Tilly's channel since she took part in creating this tag. Thank you again so much for watching. Let me know down below your thoughts on some of these questions, as I would love to know. I hope you are having a wonderful reading week, a wonderful Victober, and I will see you next time. Bye!